So again, a very warm welcome to this course. We are really excited to have you all here, and we are really excited to start this. It's the first time we offer this course, and the course has been co-created by several universities. As you know, University of Heidelberg, Sorbonne University, University of Warsaw, University of Copenhagen, and University of Mannheim, and is partly financed by the 4EU Plus Alliance, which is a European university alliance that aims at enhancing cooperation in education and also in research among European universities. Since we are many people, or since several universities are involved, there are also several people involved. Georgie Kleff and Tina Leitgeb from the University of Heidelberg. Georgie has initiated the AIR MOOC and was important in creating this MOOC, which sparked the idea for this course as well. We have Mikołaj and Oskar from University of Warsaw, Deborah from Sorbonne University, Gita and Thijs from Copenhagen University, and my name is Dominika Wruck from the University of Mannheim. What we have also created within the last weeks is a public course platform, transform-sustainability.org, where we will provide the contents for this course. The idea behind the platform is not only to have a platform to be able to provide contents for students across different universities, but also to enhance the network of sustainability educators, so of people who are doing education in the context of sustainability. And therefore, we want to provide the contents as much as possible really online, to put everything online so that others can learn from our experiences and perhaps not reinventing the wheel when they set up a new course in the context of sustainability. What we are planning to do is also to feature the student input. So we will later talk about the group work that you are supposed to do as part of this course. And we plan to feature some of the results on the platform to provide, again, other educators, but also other students with some ideas of how such a group work could look like. Some of the material that is needed for the course we are not allowed to provide publicly, so we will also have an internal area, and you will receive the link and the password within the next days. We're still thinking about different options of how to provide you a forum of exchange, whether it will be on this platform or a different one. We will hopefully let you know next week. But this will be the major, I would say, source for you to get the information on the course and to get the contents that we have discussed in the course. Before I now would like to go and turn to some contents and describe what we will talk about in the next weeks of this course, what would be great is we would like also to get to know you a little bit. And since we are too many people that everybody can present him or herself, we suggest or we would like to ask you some questions that are related to this course. So many of you have written to us and wanted to register because they are interested in working at some point in the broad context of sustainability, and we would like to pin down what are your interests more concretely. So are you planning, or can you imagine to found a social enterprise? Are you planning to find an organization, an enterprise that on the one hand aims for economic goals, but at the same time wants to contribute to social or ecological goals? Are you already planning to do so, or is it something you could imagine? Are you planning to work in the context of nonprofits? Is this something you aim for? Or do you think you want to work in an established company and thereby ideally contributing to enhancing the social and environmental impact of that company? Or do you want to work in the broader context, potentially for public authorities, United Nations, and these kinds of organizations? Or are you planning to work in academia to make an academic career related to and doing research related to the context of sustainability? Of course, you can also say that you have no idea yet, that you participate in this course out of interest, or that you're not planning to work in the context of sustainability. And I will start. Now the survey, it would be great if you could answer to this question so we get a broad idea of what are your interests. I'll give you a minute. There's still some answers coming in. There's some movement, so I'll wait a couple of more minutes, or 1 more minute, I think. Of course, you don't have to, give a precise answer, and we are aware that you might not have concrete plans for the future yet, but just what would be your preference if you had to decide today? Okay, most of you seem to have participated, so I will stop and show the results now. Actually, quite a few of you, 13 out of 49, can imagine to found a social enterprise or are already planning to do so. Some of you want to work in non-profits. Many of you want to work in established companies, but they are in the context of sustainability. One person wants to work in academia. That's nice to see that somebody wants to proceed this career. Does anyone who said that he or she wants to found a social enterprise or is already planning to do so, perhaps we should have differentiated between these answers, want to say a couple of words about their project? Is it something that is already in development, or is it still so early that you don't want to share?
Yes, I answered that, and for me, it's more of a plan than something that is really happening right now. I hope to do so in the long term, like it's a long-term perspective.
Okay,
but
great, thank you.
Actually, I was hesitating between this answer and the answer working on the public with a public authority like the United Nations, because I also plan maybe one day on working somewhere like that.
So you want to work in the context of sustainability, either really, it somehow depends, right, whether you have the right partners or have a great idea for a social enterprise, and if not, probably
exactly
joining an established organization surely is an interesting alternative. Thank you for sharing.
Thank
Anyone
you.
else? You can just talk, you don't need to raise your hands. Okay, we can also talk about it later. So thank you for participating, giving us a first impression of what you're interested in. So I'll share again. There is another question that we would like to ask you, and this relates also to the contents of this course. You have surely, all of you have already heard about SDGs, right? Sustainable Development Goals. So the goals that have been set up in 2015 as part of the Agenda 2030. So they made those goals that the United Nations or members of the United Nations have agreed upon, that these are the most pressing ones on which we as a world society should work and which we want to achieve until 2030. The first one is to end poverty everywhere, so really to make sure that nobody lives in poverty. The second one is to end hunger, so zero hunger as an objective. Increasing or securing good health and well-being is the number 3. Securing and providing equitable and quality education is number 4. Number 5 focuses on gender equality and wants to ensure gender equality everywhere. Number 6 is to provide clear or to ensure access to clear water and sanitation across the world. Making affordable and clean, sustainable energy accessible across the world is number 7. Provide decent work conditions and possibilities of economic growth is number 8. Ensuring solid infrastructure, promoting innovation and industry is number 9. Reduce inequalities in countries and across countries is number 10. Number 11 is to create and sustainable cities and communities. Promoting sustainable and responsible consumption and production is number 12. Number 13 is to take urgent action to reduce climate change and its consequences. Securing and securing life below water and saving our oceans is number 14. Securing life on land is number 15. Number 16 is to ensure peace, justice, and strong institutions, a sustainable development goal that has surely tragically gained importance within the last week of the Russian war against Ukraine, right? And number 17 is to focus on partnerships to achieve several goals simultaneously. So we would like to also get an idea of what are the SDGs that you would like to focus on, or that you perhaps have some experience with. We acknowledge, of course, that all of these goals are interdependent and all of these goals are relevant, and it's difficult to say, oh, this is more important than others. But perhaps you have some experiences that make you feel closer to some of the goals, and it would be great for us to get a first idea of what you would like to focus on your discussions and your ideas. There is one difficulty in Zoom. It's only possible to have 10 responses or response categories. So we have 2 questions here. So you have to answer both because otherwise the survey does not work. So we have in the first question, I started the questions now. You can choose between the first 9 goals, or you can say no, number 10 to 17. And then in the second question, you can say one of the goals 10 to 17, or you can say it's you focus on the goal from the other list. So I leave you again a moment to answer these questions. Okay, I think most of you have now participated, so I share the results with you. And we see a quite diverse picture. So there are some goals which receive quite much interest, like quality education. Almost 10 people have said that this is very relevant SDG, or they have some experience with it. There are, I think, no SDGs which have received no attention, right? So everybody thinks, at least one person thinks that this is the most relevant, or this is the most, the SDGs that is most close to them. But I think in general, I probably would have expected that many of you focus on certain aspects. So I think it's great to see how diverse your ideas and your interests are. This is, I think, a good sign. Will probably spark interesting discussions. Okay, thank you for giving us some ideas of what are your interests for your personal future, and also with regard to the SDGs. This will be we will come back to the SDGs later today. Okay, what I want to do now shortly is to give you an overview of the topics of our course. And what we want to start with is to discuss why is it so difficult to achieve sustainability goals, right? I mean, many people probably agree that achieving sustainability in ecological and social terms is important, is relevant, and should receive some attention. And at the same time, we often do not observe as much progress in terms of achieving these goals as we would hope to. And we would propose to you or suggest to think of grand challenges or wicked problems as one explanation why it is so hard to achieve these goals. So the 2 concepts, grand challenges and wicked problems, we do use them a little bit interchangeably. They do have some different origins. The concept of grand challenges is oftentimes used in the organizational research context, while the concept of wicked problems stems from policy planning, from the policy planning context. But they have in our understanding, strong relations, both in terms of explaining the problems and in terms of how to address or achieve potential solutions. And I think what we just did to give you an idea of what wicked problems or grand challenges are, we just searched for some visualizations that are often used. And this is one of the things that we found. where you can see a small city in the countryside that is threatened by big waves, right? So you can see that these big waves can probably wash away the entire city. And I think this is a good picture of the impact that these wicked problems might have. So typically, wicked problems do have strong effects on different stakeholders. And what this visualization also shows, I think, is that these problems are often interconnected. So while finding solutions to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, we probably create a situation that makes a recession more probable, and again create a situation that worsens all the climate change problems. So this idea of wicked problems are interrelated is transported, I think, in this visualization, and this is certainly an important aspect of these grand challenges. Another visualization that is often used is this of this knot, which shows or puts emphasis on the fact that cause and effect relationships are difficult to understand in the context of wicked problems, because there are so many different relations and influence factors that, in particular, one organization or one stakeholder alone cannot capture him or herself. So it is really the complexity that is emphasized here. And on the other hand, this picture shows well that there is no one clear solution for a wicked problem. You cannot resolve climate change by only one solution and one program, but there are typically a diversity of potential solutions that again are interlinked and that can achieve or contribute to achieve betterment in one aspect, but perhaps they can even worsen the situation in another aspect. There are quite some attempts to untie this knot or to disentangle this knot. So in the context of wicked problems, creating causal loops where all the factors that are influencing factors is quite usual, and you can find quite complex pictures like this. This is from a recent publication where the authors tried to capture the causal loops for the COVID pandemic, and showing that the COVID pandemic has effects or impact on the health system, but also on the economic system, and also in social areas and in the environmental areas. And as this picture shows, at the edges of the picture, you always see that there are some gray areas that indicate that there are even more connections that are depicted here, and emphasizing again the complexity of these problems. I think one other nice visualization that I want to share with you that puts emphasis on a different aspect of wicked problems is this one. You probably all know the parable of the blind man who approached an elephant, and depending where they stand, decide that the elephant is like a serpent, or that the elephant is like a spear, or that the elephant is like a rope or like a wall. So as they cannot see the full picture, the entire animal, they only can describe what they see from their perspective. And thinking of wicked problems such as climate change, inequality, it is always the case that stakeholders, the diverse stakeholders are involved, right? Both in terms of who is affected by this problem, and also who can contribute to finding solutions to the problem. And this diversity of stakeholders, this problem ambiguity, is really making it difficult to first agree on the problem itself, and also on potential solutions for the problem. And in a recent presentation at our university from Schula, Coco, and Piazza, I saw this I think, helpful example that I want to share with you. So they talked about how to achieve the goal of providing healthy food in Houston, and why it is so difficult to find appropriate solutions. And what they emphasize is that first, it is not really clear of what causes the problem. So is it a lack of access to healthy food, or is it a lack of knowledge about a healthy food, or is it just that people work a lot and do not have the time to prepare healthy food, or perhaps they do not have the income because fast food is much cheaper. And depending, as you can imagine, what you think or what a stakeholder thinks is causes the problem, different solutions probably will be derived, right? So is it are you supposed to improve the access, the knowledge, or perhaps the income of families in the neighborhoods? Then again, there is also insecurity with regard to who is the target group. So is it the city who is responsible, or the county who is responsible to provide a certain infrastructure that helps people to access healthy food? Or is it the family's shopping behavior, or is it about individuals? Should we strengthen the food education or food-related education of children, and does this resolve the problem? So the causes are diverse, and also the target groups. And this also accounts for the goal. So do we want to eliminate or lessen the condition, or is it to teach people, or to achieve a behavioral change? So there are different goals that can be thought about, and they all seem to be reasonable, right? And resulting from this complexity and multiplicity of possibilities with regard to target groups, causes, and also the goals, there are diverse domains of action. So you can think of provide better access to fresh products, to support local farmers and enhance farmers markets, or you can introduce nutrition education or cooking education when you want to put more emphasis on the individual level. So this is, I think, a nice example showing how complex these wicked problems can be, and how difficult it is thus to find appropriate solutions. And I want to focus on one more analytical model from Rittel and Weber, who developed a model of wicked problems where they identified several elements that characterize social wicked problems. And some of the characteristics actually focus on the problems. So first they say the problems themselves are highly complex, and it's really difficult, or rather impossible, to find a definite formulation of the problem. In the example we have just seen, different stakeholders may attribute the problem to different causes, and thus identify different formulation. Another aspect of this is that the knowledge about this problem might be fragmented. So different typically no stakeholder, nobody has the entire knowledge, but the knowledge is fragmented across different stakeholders. And while there are oftentimes many scientific results regarding be it inequality, climate change, all these problems also rely to some extent on evaluation. As there are different stakeholders involved, and as knowledge is fragmented, it is difficult to really capture all the knowledge and to make one decision based on scientific results only, but it's also always evaluative criteria that is relevant to define a problem. Some other elements refer to the solutions of the problem. So first, Rittel and Weber say that there is no stopping rule. So typically, wicked problems are characterized by the fact that you cannot completely resolve them. So many people thereby speak of a betterment of a wicked problem. So resolving the issue of unhealthy food is not really possible. There will always be some people who will eat unhealthy food, but the objective typically is to achieve betterment. It is another characteristic is that solutions are not true or false, right or wrong, but rather good or bad, as they are based on evaluative criteria. Diverse solutions are possible, And evaluation of these solutions is quite difficult. So in particular, when goals are not achieved, it is not so easy to say that the solution was wrong, but perhaps the context conditions were not right, or perhaps the investments were too low. Perhaps it would have been more successful if more people would have participated and more money would have gone to a project. So it's really difficult to evaluate individual solutions. And solutions thereby cannot be tested without consequences. So you can have a solution for the healthy food, for the unhealthy food problem, but you would have to test it in real life, so to speak, right? And this means that it costs a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and at the same time cannot be reversed. They also suggest that there are certain features that describe the relations that are in motion in the context of wicked problems. So first, as multiple stakeholders are involved, they may have different interests. When you think of the healthy food example, supermarkets might be more interested in selling unhealthy products because they have larger profit margins. On the other hand, local communities might be more interested in healthy food. So you have different stakeholders with different interests, and it is not so easy, therefore, to find solutions and to define the problem in a unified way. And as shown in the initial picture, wicked problems are themselves interrelated. So you could, for instance, promote healthy food and achieve some betterment in that context, but that could perhaps worsen the income or the economic situation of local families, because it is more expensive to live healthy and to buy healthy food. And if this was not enough of criteria within the last years, what has been promoted, that there are even super wicked problems. Levin and colleagues have used the example of climate change to show characteristics of this particularly wicked problem. So first they say time is running out, right? And in the context of climate change, I think this is particularly visible because many experts emphasize that there is a certain tipping point. And when we cross this tipping point, the impact of climate change has been so strong that we probably cannot reverse its impact and cannot achieve a betterment that will be sufficient. They also emphasize that in terms of time, that the future is typically radically discounted, right? So if we estimate the consequences in a way that really takes into account how our future generations would suffer from climate change, we probably would have made other decisions now. But typically, short-term goals outweigh long-term goals of decision makers, and therefore we do not find solutions that are appropriate. They also put emphasis on the aspect that there is no central authority, right, to resolve or to manage a problem. Problems such as climate change or inequality, poverty, they cannot be resolved by one country or one community, but really need the cooperation of many actors, which makes it more difficult to find appropriate solutions. So while this is, of course, a large complexity, I think we therefore want to propose or to present to you another typology that we think is helpful to really capture and understand the wickedness, the degree of wickedness of a certain problem. Alford and Head have suggested this analytical framework where they focus on two dimensions. The first one is the problems that are actually dealt with, and they thereby emphasize that problems may differ in terms of how complex they are. For instance, it depends on is there a sufficient knowledge about the problem and the solution, how fragmented is the knowledge, and that problems can actually be more or less complex and therefore have a more or less degree degree, higher or lower degree of wickedness. The second dimension is the stakeholders and the complexity of stakeholders involved. So they suggest to analyze how diverse are these stakeholders, and in particular, how diverse are their interests, in order to understand, is it really a complex problem, a wicked problem, or is it perhaps less complex in this dimension? And they put emphasis on the second feature here, which is the power distribution. So is the power distributed equally, or is it rather that certain stakeholders have much more power? They suggest to use this framework in order to make sure that not all problems are described as wicked problems, because what happens then, or what is the danger to some extent, as wicked problems are so difficult to resolve, there might be some hesitance to really act when all problems are described as wicked problems, and perhaps some solutions can be found more easily for less wicked problems. Okay, so these are just some ideas of typologies, or how you could really understand the complexity of a problem and what characterizes wicked problems. But what we want to put an emphasis on is and what is also done in literature, is that action is needed, right? Despite the fact that it is really difficult to identify a problem, difficult to identify the good solutions and to test these solutions, it is important at the same time to do so. And many of these concepts that we have talked about so far have been developed in the context of public policy. So really aiming at how can the state, how can government resolve these issues and achieve betterment in the wicked problems. But what has been promoted increasingly, and in the organizational context and in the context of talking about grand challenges, is that organizations, individual organizations, can contribute strongly also, and are increasingly responsible to contribute to resolve or to achieve a betterment of wicked problems. And I think just not to going completely into detail, but to give you one first idea of how this, what is the role of organizations, I want to emphasize a model from Maya and Zelos, where they have described that organizations are sometimes described as, or organizational research as really focusing on the organizations and on explaining organizational performance and on understanding how the organization can be configured in a way that the organization is performing well. Increasingly, there was the view that organizations do interact with their environments, right? But mainly asking questions, how does the environment actually influence the organization, and how does the environment therefore influence organizational performance? It is increasingly acknowledged that organizations do also affect their social systems or their environments, right? And the debates about what is the impact of organizations, that organizations should measure their impact also in ecological and social terms, has gained importance within the last years. And what Maya and Zelo suggest here, that organizations can even go a step, can and should probably go a step further towards not only understanding how they affect their social systems, but how to organize system change and actively contribute to changing systems in a way that contributes to resolving or to achieving a betterment of in terms of wicked problems. So this is, I would say, more or less the view that we take in this course, to understand really how do organizations not only interact with their environments, but rather how can they actively contribute to changing social systems in a desirable way. Another a model or idea from research that we want to put forward here is that from Ferraro and colleagues, who describe strategies on how to really address grand challenges as an organization. They borrow ideas from pragmatist philosophy, and which is argue that organizations need to develop robust action. What does this mean? On the one hand, we need to act now, so organizations should develop strategies and action that help them to achieve short-term objectives. But considering that there is so much uncertainty with regard to how things will develop, they should allow them to preserve some long-term flexibility. And they suggest 3 strategies on how this can be achieved. First, they suggest that participatory architectures are developed. So what does that mean? These are structures and rules of engagement that allow diverse and heterogeneous actors to interact constructively over prolonged time spans. So earlier we said that diverse actors, stakeholders are involved both in being affected by wicked problems and also in resolving wicked problems. Hopefully. And in order to create and coordinate these organizations and to make sure that they actually contribute to resolving issues, architectures are needed that have not too high hurdles. So people or organizations, it should be easy for them to participate over a longer time span, but at the same time, really to show commitment to certain topics. And they provide the example of a global reporting initiative. The initiative that aims to or describes how the CSR reporting of firms should look like, as an example of how this can be achieved. So the initiators of this initiative actually had quite strong objectives and goals in terms of and quite strict ideas of how to achieve more sustainability and how organizations and firms could contribute to more sustainability, but they deliberately left it quite open and made sure by this means that many corporations, standard organizations, and other experts participate in the endeavor and can bring in their own ideas. And this allowed the initiative to grow quite strongly and over a quite long time. So this achieving a certain infrastructure that allows organizations to participate, they put an emphasis on that. In this course, we would argue that probably the projects and the topics that we talk about do not focus so much on these larger initiatives that aim to really coordinate. But I think we think it's important to put an emphasis on the aspect, the element, the coordination between these organizations and making sure that we learn from positive and negative experiences of others is important. The second strategy they put emphasis on is multivocal inscription. So they argue since so many different stakeholders are involved, everybody can interpret aspects from his or her perspective, right? So issues should be presented in a way that different audiences can apply their different evaluative criteria in a manner that promotes coordination but does not require explicit consensus. So we cannot expect that everybody agrees on a certain issue before they take action, but it should be possible to participate in an endeavor to contribute to the betterment of a wicked problem, even if no explicit consensus is achieved. And the SDGs, we think, is a good example of multivocal inscription. So no poverty the goal can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? But it still helps to coordinate different efforts across the world by giving it this umbrella term of no poverty and describing it as a sustainable development goal. The third strategy they suggest, and I think this is particularly interesting and important for our course, is distributed experimentation. So they suggest iterative action that generates small wins, promotes evolutionary learning, and increases engagement, while allowing unsuccessful efforts to be abandoned. So this suggests that different organizations and individuals choose different or develop different solutions to wicked problems, and have probably local or smaller experiments where they can test these solutions. These probably generate small wins, so individual organizations do not have huge impact, but rather small impact. But in combination, of course, the small wins or the impact can be larger. And it is important to test things because, as we heard before, solutions cannot be tested in a laboratory. We have to test them in the field, right? What is, I think, important about this distributed experimentation, and puts emphasis again on this coordination aspect. So it is important, and it is suggested that despite these local or distributed experiments, they do coordinate to some extent to make sure that that they learn from each other. Okay, and just very shortly, because we really need to move to the group work. So these are the elements, or I think our course is inspired by these ideas and by these strategies and relates to them. And we will focus in the first module on innovation on the question, how can we generate ideas that actually contribute to the betterment of weekend problems. We will then, in the second module on strategy, focus on the question, how can we really make that happen, make these ideas happen? How can we develop business models and strategies that really help to achieve these goals? What organizational and legal forms are helpful? We will then talk in the module on scaling about how can we actually enlarge these small wins that I was talking about. How can we grow as an organization, or alternatively diffuse our ideas to make sure that they are copied in other contexts, and thus the impact is grown. And finally, in the impact module, we want to put emphasis on that there is important to continuously evaluate whether goals are achieved, right? In the idea of distributed experimentation, I think it's important to say, okay, which ideas did work, and what did work well, what did not work well. So you will receive the slides, and you probably have already seen the course outline with a more detailed description of the modules, and you also find them, of course, online. A short view at the schedule. So we are now here on the 2nd of March having our introduction meeting. Next week, we will talk about innovation. So there will be a lecture on that. And in the week after, we will have a group work session. So for each module, we will have 2 meetings. In the first, you will get mostly some inputs, but we will try to still make it a little bit interactive. And in the second meeting for each module, we will focus on facilitating your group work, providing some additional concepts or means that help you to develop your ideas and work as a group, and of course be open for all your questions. There were some questions from students. What happens if they cannot participate in all of the meetings? Usually it shouldn't be a too big problem. Please let us know if you cannot participate in the meetings. But the lectures and the meetings will be recorded for the group work sessions. I don't know if it will be possible completely. So it would be good if you could participate there. The lectures will be recorded and put online, so you can look at the contents or have access to these contents. We will only have a 1-week Easter break. I think this is important to note. We had to make sure that we find in the different schedules at the different universities sufficient overlap to make this course happen. And this was only possible by having only 1 week of Easter break. I know that at some universities there are 2 weeks planned, but I hope that you find the course interesting enough to take 1.5 hours to participate in the lectures. If not, again, please let us know. What is important to know, you should have the information, but I think to repeat it is surely not a problem. The student assignment or the evaluation mainly takes place on the group level. So you will, as a group, develop a written assignment. We will thereby provide questions and assignments for each module, and we will expect that you, as a group, then submit one paper, one report. We will provide more details on how it should look like once we will have the groups and start working in groups. But probably it's important for you to note that the 30th of June will be the deadline for the report. So we will have lectures and meetings until the beginning of May, and then you will still have some time as a group to work on the written report. Before the reports are submitted, we will have student presentations. So this will be towards the end of the course, in the beginning and mid of May. And there you are quite free to use a format. You can make a presentation, you can develop a video, or choose whatever form of for presenting your ideas and results. But this again will be discussed in the course, and I think this will become more clearer once we make some progress with the contents. Individual participation still is part of grading, so 20% will rely on the individual participation, probably to a large extent your participation in the group sessions, but also I think here we will have sometimes more or interactive parts where we will actually look at how you participated. Okay, so I talked now quite a lot. Are there some questions regarding contents that are quite pressing? Everything is clear so far? Okay, then I go back to the slides. And what I want to talk about now is how we build groups, because we want to try at least to start a group building now and hope that it works as we planned. Sorry, I have some issues with starting presentation. There it is. So in the beginning, you already answered the question which SDG you find most interesting, most pressing, or can relate to. And we have now developed breakout rooms for each of the goals, or for some goals there was much interest, so we developed more than one group. So we would now ask you in a second to join these groups and here to then form groups, hopefully in these groups. So there are some rules. If you see that there are more than 5 persons, because this is the maximum size of a group in one of the groups, or that there is very few persons, just 2 persons in a group, then this would be probably a too small group. Then please choose a different group yourself. So we hope that you self-organized to some extent. So go back, you have the possibility to go back to the main room and then to enter a different subgroup or a different breakout session. So try to do that yourself. If you have entered 3 groups already and saw that there are always 5 people or always an empty room, tell us, and then we will put you in one of the groups at some point. Of course, it doesn't make sense to self-organize. And what would be important for us is we have created this course in cooperation with several universities, right? So it would be really great if you also worked across universities. So if you are in a group where only students from the same university are in, please say, okay, I would try to join a different group. Of course, there can be 2 or 3 students from the same university, because from some universities are more participants than from others, but please try to have some diversity with regard to the universities. And while you're doing that, this will take a couple of minutes. Think about 2 things. So why did you choose this SDG? So is this some personal experience that made you choose it, or is it a random choice? And then start a discussion in the group by presenting each other what was your reason. You could also say that you know a certain organizations like a social enterprise or a citizens initiative that you find fascinating and that actually addresses the SDG. So use the SDG and the reasons or the organizations that you know to start a discussion. You can, of course, already break down the SDG into more concrete problem, right? So we talked about the example of healthy food. So, for instance, this would be part or could belong to SDG 3 of good health and well-being. But of course, you do not need to talk about these very abstract and broad goals, but you can discuss more detailed goals or projects that you know. So this would be the first task. And if there is still some time, we have to see that then you can jointly brainstorm perhaps about one project or one problem that you have identified and really think about, okay, how complex is this problem? How is the knowledge fragmentation? So apply this model that we have presented shortly earlier to the problem that you want to talk about. And the goal hopefully is that you find your groups in this session already, the groups that you will work on throughout the course. But we are aware that for some people it might be difficult to choose, or you might be in a group that you then find not so interesting. So there are different options how to proceed, right? So the first option is that you create the group directly in this session. Then we would ask you to write up the names and the email addresses and to send it to Tina. So we know that this is your group or who is part of the group. You can, of course, say, okay, we had a good discussion, but we don't know yet where to go or whether this makes sense. Then we would suggest that you meet as an individual group within the next couple of days to further discuss and to see if you can agree on a topic that you want to work on or that you think is interesting, and you self-organize. The third option is, of course, that you say, okay, it was an interesting discussion, but not what I want to focus or work on within the next couple of weeks. Then we will have another group session in the next week's meeting. So there is still a chance to find your group there. And if you still don't find a group after next week's session, then you should write us and send us your interest, and then we will allocate you to one of the groups. So before you go now into the breakout sessions, two things that we would like to ask you, please remember to exchange names and email addresses, right? So that you have a possibility to further discuss with each other and to contact each other. And then remember, please try to form groups with students from different universities in order to really take advantage of this international course and course which is a cooperation of many universities, and do not stick only in groups that you already know. Okay, are there some questions regarding group work?
We have a question from Simon. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks. So maybe you can specify how we are supposed to work on the topic we choose, because it's like interdependent, I would say. Are we expected to create social entrepreneurship business plan or something like this, or in which direction do you expect us to go? Yeah, that's it.
Over the course, we expect you to develop one idea. This could be the founding idea for a social enterprise. This could be the idea for a nonprofit or a civil society organization. Any organizational form, so we are very open. But the idea is actually that you choose one problem that you want to address as a group and for which you want to develop a solution of some form. And throughout the course, you will then work on developing a business model, developing a scaling strategy, developing an impact measurement strategy on topics that relate to the modules that are part of this course, right? So you should probably, that's why we start off with the SDGs, because we think, okay, there at least is some starting point of a shared interest with regard to, do I think about climate change, or do I rather think about inequality, or what are the topics that more or less interest me? And then you would have to define as a group, what is the concrete problem, right, that we really want to address, and what could be a solution.
All right,
Does this answer your question? Okay, thanks. Other questions? Okay, I don't see any hands anymore.
I can, if it's possible. Where do we find those groups to join? Are we supposed
We
to now
haven't
talk
opened them
about
up.
on a chat and some like connect each other, or there's a platform for this?
We stay here in this Zoom meeting, and we have created sub groups or breakout sessions. You should see the sessions now, and you should be able, there are how many sessions? 16, 17? And you should be now able to join any session that interests you. And again, if you are too many people or too few people, please come back to this main room and either select a different session, or if you have tried it a couple of times, then we will allocate you.
All right, thank you.
Hello, I would have a question as well.
Yes, please.
It's more regarding the...
Excuse me, could you speak up a little bit? I do not hear you very well.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, it's okay.
Great. Yes, I just wanted to know if for like next sessions, it would be possible to have the slide contents before the class so we can follow on the same time and have notes on them.
Okay, I cannot assure that because I'm not sure if they will be ready by then, but we will try our very best to send them perhaps immediately before the session takes place. That would be probably of help, right?
Okay, yes, it would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was the major one. Perhaps some of you could share some experiences of the group discussions. How was it? Was it helpful? Were you able to find groups already or topics that you want to work on, or is it that you still need some time and additional meetings? I have visited a sustainable consumption group, and I had the impression there that there were already some ideas. Does somebody from the group want to share perhaps some experiences?
I can talk about what happened in our group. We had
Great,
seven of us, so we kind of we were just sort of discussing how we would break up and if anyone had any preliminary ideas. We had the two kind of major topics which people were interested in were surrounding kind of food consumption and fast fashion, and sort of both kind of on overconsumption and how to limit it and sort of changing mindsets and that kind of thing. As we had 7 people, we were sort of discussing breaking into these two kind of concepts. So yeah, if anyone wanted to join those two, we're gonna just raise that to the broader group. Yeah. So
you have already created 2 subgroups?
Not entirely.
Okay.
But we're all sort of there's a few people who are kind of more set on each idea, and then there's some people who are still trying to figure out where they stand, I guess. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay. Did you all exchange some contact information that help you to continue your discussions? Okay, great. If within the next days you really come to a point where you think, okay, this is the groups we want to work for the next couple of weeks, it would be great if you could let us know. So write us a list of of names and email addresses. And if you say, okay, we are just a group of 3, it would be great if somebody joined us. Then we could next week in our session, you could present shortly your project or the idea that you have. And then perhaps some of the participants who have not yet found a group can join you. So everybody knows how to go on or what he or she can do? Or is it that some of you are somehow, okay, I don't know what's next. We have to wait for the next meeting. There is Yanin. You raise your hand? Yanin, sorry.
I just want to ask, I'm from the group Reduced Inequality. And for us, we already had some ideas, but I just want to say, what if some of our ideas might be overlapped with the other groups? For example, if we are also talking something about the education equality, would that also be a problem, or
No.
is that okay?
So again, the SDGs were just, give you some guidance to start discussions, to initiate discussions. But you can, of course, combine ideas from different SDGs. And I would really be surprised if two groups really would have the identical idea, right, or tackle the identical problem. So it's no problem to combine ideas from different SDGs.
Yeah, thank you. And another just small question that all the numbers should not be necessarily from different universities, right? Because just accidentally 5 of us are all from the University Mannheim, but we think that's okay. So
Okay.
we just stick to the group.
Okay, I think this is, it would be great, I think, to take advantage of the fact that there are students from different universities. So we really hope to, provide you the possibility to work with students from different cultures and different countries. I think this could be an additional, or we hope this is an additional learning or an additional takeaway. But if it doesn't apply to all groups, I think this is not a basic problem. Probably you could think about, splitting up into groups and then inviting others. But if you say, okay, you have already agreed on something and you're all interested in the same thing, this is not a no-go, but the ideal would be a mixed group. Let's put it like this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We are already over time. I don't want to take too much of your time. Are there any questions for now? Or you all know what to do next and have the possibility to exchange. For those who really find out within the next week that they want to work on something else and didn't work out and haven't yet found a group, we will have another group session in our next meeting, during our next meeting. So it's not a problem. But if you already find a group, please write us and let us know, even if the group is not complete, right? Because then we can help, finding people, and we have an overview. So for us, it would be great to have an overview before our next session of how far we are in the process of group building. Okay, so next week we meet here in the same room, so you can use the same link. We will send another email, but just to make sure, we will probably send you additional emails regarding, in order to receive your consent, that we are allowed to share your emails among the participants, because this would, I think, facilitate communication, and a couple of other things that we still need to resolve. But yeah, we hope that you have received a good idea of what you can expect from the next weeks and from this course. I found it great that you all participated, and I hope it was a little bit fun as well, informative. Yeah, and thank you for your interest and your participation, and see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.